Eli is 90% amazing and 10% a terrible decision. The terrible decision, or several terrible decisions, are spoilers, so I will save that for the end and I will give a spoiler warning. For the most part, this will be spoiler-free, but I don't know whether I recommend it or not because I have a lot of praise for this, but ultimately I was left exceptionally disappointed, so I don't know if I recommend it. This was released in 2019. It's directed by Ciarán Foy and it's written by David Chirchirillo, Ian Goldberg and Richard Naing. And this stars Charlie Shotwell as Eli. And one of the things I really want to praise about this is the performance of Shotwell. The performance was phenomenal. Everybody's performance was very good, but Eli was just such a compelling character. And the narrative sounded really interesting. Eli goes to this house that's closed off from the outside world because he has a rare genetic condition affecting his immune system, and they're going to cure him at this house. And I think medical stories are often so great when it comes to horror films because, in general, medical things are quite scary in real life, and then you throw in some really strong horror elements and it becomes really fascinating. And while it got off to a slow start, I'd say from about 20 minutes until towards the end, I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a really fascinating story. I didn't know what was going on. It was very atmospheric, very spooky, very creepy. Some jump scares, some more psychological as we start to learn things, but we can't quite work out what it means, and there are certain twists and turns with the narrative. I will say that there's a character in this who I thought was exceptionally pointless, and this is Sadie Sink's character called Hayley. I thought her performance was very good, but the character didn't, in my opinion, really add anything. In fact, there were quite a few characters in this who just seemed kind of pointless. And that aside, for the bulk of the narrative, I was enjoying it. And it's not scary, but it's suspenseful, and there were a couple of small jump scares and things that helped to make it a little bit more intimidating. But in general, the narrative is what carried it. The narrative and Eli as a character, because it gave away nothing. There was a lot of mystery, and Eli was a really likeable protagonist. I really liked him as a character. So for the most part, granted, not a lot happens, but it's very atmospheric, and Eli is just really brilliant. So there was a lot there to keep me engaged. And then there were several things that I just thought were absolutely terrible. So I guess I will now, with a big spoiler warning, go into more detail. The bulk of the film, I thought it was fantastic. I genuinely thought I would be coming away from this saying that it's one of the best horrors I've seen this year. I absolutely adored it. And then they ruined it. So there will be big spoilers from now as I talk about what happens. And the ending seemed like it was going to be interesting. Eli was in a very difficult situation. I didn't know how he'd get out of this. And then from the point when, as I said, these are big spoilers, when his mother discovers the bodies of the children, which looked incredible, by the way, very creepy, very well done. From that point on, though, I feel like every decision was just ridiculous. It made no sense. Nothing was well explained. The father wasn't well explained. His character was very, very badly written. And the whole demonic aspect just made no sense with the bulk of the rest of the film. And the story up until that point seemed like it was well written. But then when I reflect on the story, once we know what happens at the end, it actually turns out it was very badly written. Because it just makes no sense. And the mother's role in this makes no sense. I really liked her. I trusted her, and obviously that became a little bit questionable towards the end, but I quite liked the character nonetheless. But when we reflect on the events that happened before this point, it's just nonsense. And it's like they didn't have a good story, so they decided to throw in a lot of different elements. Obviously, the demonic aspect, and then the ghosts, and then the character of Hayley, who I guess seemed a little mysterious, but ultimately what she represented, or ultimately who she was, I just thought was absolutely ridiculous. So it's actually very badly written, even though I felt like 90% of this was actually very well written, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Once we know what they were trying to achieve and the story they were ultimately trying to tell, on reflection, it's actually terrible. So it's a bit of a strange one. And also, it was funny. The ending was genuinely funny. Sometimes a horror film can be so bad that it's laughable. And it's an enjoyable, well, maybe not enjoyable experience, but it's an entertaining experience in some ways because it's so bad it's funny. And basically everything that happened from the point of Eli finding his inner strength and making people hang upside down and spin in a circle and then burn alive. It wasn't scary. It wasn't atmospheric. It was funny because it was so badly executed and it was just nonsense and it came out of nowhere and it didn't make sense within the rest of the narrative. So on the one hand, I enjoyed the bulk of this, but the ending absolutely trashed that experience. And once I know how it ended, I could then look back and say, actually, that was really badly written. That was very poorly written. The performances are still very strong. Some of the characters are still interesting. Eli, absolutely, I liked his character until... Well, I liked him until the end, but he became very boring within the last couple of minutes. And I didn't really care about the character anymore. All of this is to say, Eli had incredible potential if they'd chosen a different ending. And I don't know what started. Did they have the idea of a young boy with a rare condition, and then he would stay in this house and strange things would happen? Did they start with that idea and flesh it out and come to a terrible conclusion? Or did they have the ending first and then work out the rest of it backwards? If it's the former, then I think they could have done significantly better. If it's the latter, then I'd say there was no hope for this narrative anyway. Do I recommend it? Honestly, I have absolutely no idea. I'd say I don't know, because I enjoyed the bulk of it. But then on reflection, I can see how badly written it is, and the ending just really ruined it. So I'd actually say no, because it's exceptionally frustrating and ultimately very badly written. But the character of Eli was, for the most part, a likeable character with a really strong performance from Charlie Shotwell. In the right hands, and with a different ending, Eli could have been phenomenal. Unfortunately, too many bad decisions were made for the last 5-10 minutes of the film, and it ultimately ruined the entire experience.